What's up, nerds, and welcome to another episode of Morphin March. So, now that we've had a bit of time to talk about the lore of Power Rangers S.P.D, it's time to take a look at the actual show itself and break down what happens in its 38-episode runtime. Now, obviously, it'd take hours to go over all the specific details, so we're going to mainly focus on the highlights for this video. And the show kicks off with a good one. The second the intro song is over, we immediately cut to Grum blowing up an entire planet purely because it has no further use to him. Maximizing a villain's intimidation factor with minimal time is an impressive feat for any story, but by the grid if they didn't nail it here with this one. We then immediately cut to the main locale for this show and a narrator spinning some exposition for the audience.
In the not-too-distant future, Earth has become a haven for all alien races who come from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to live in peace. 99% of the newcomers live in harmony. But for the 1% who can't, there is Space Patrol Delta. The new breed of police to bring them in.
Then we are immediately introduced to three of our Ranger cast, Sky, Sid, and Bridge, along with them each getting a moment to show off their civilian powers.
Perp at 2 o'clock. That's 9 o'clock, Sid.
Got it. Fist of Ire!
A bit later, we're introduced to Jack and Z as well as their abilities.
Say goodnight, friend.
We get a few brief shots of A Squad in Ranger form. We don't see them out of it until the near climax of the series, but they're quickly dispatched to the front lines to intercept Grum. And by the time the multi-part intro episode is finished, we go through the typical Monster of the Week formula, with each episode giving a specific character the opportunity to shine and gain some development. The first episode to have significant plot relevance would be the next two-parter, simply called Sam. We're introduced to the titular character straight away, asking a bunch of kids if he can play. When they refuse, he shows off his powers against their basketball in a surprisingly harmless way, before meeting the doll of a character that runs Grum's monster army named Mora. She runs it because almost every monster the Rangers battle is drawn by her and pulled into reality. Aside from that, her only real purpose in the show, at least for now, is to act as a means of breaking the tension from most of Grum's scenes with her childish antics. Back to Sam, though. Using her doll, Cindy Sunshine— no, I'm not kidding, that's its name. Using Cindy, Mora starts to gain Sam's trust by letting him think they're becoming friends. She talks Sam into helping her and a monster named Bubblesworth— no, still not kidding— to turn random citizens into dolls for Mora's collection. Now, I can probably guess what you're asking yourself. But Koga, how does turning people into dolls help further Grum's goals of stripping Earth's resources? Anyways, the show then cuts to the Rangers questioning why and how all five of them happen to have the same distinction in the form of their civilian powers in the same place on the same team. Now, Sky caps the conversation off by being incredibly rude before an alert happens, causing them to morph into action.
Back off of him, Sky. I understand what he's saying. I mean, how did we get these powers? And why is it that we all ended up here at S.P.D? I mean, is it part of some bigger plan?
Our powers are no big mystery. Face the facts. Every one of us, especially you, is a freak of nature.
Hey, that's out of line, Sky.
Jack, chill. It's all right.
S.P.D. emergency.
Bubblesworth attacks with a giant robot, incredibly common for this show, prompting the Rangers to use their Zords to nearly destroy the robot, but Sam uses his powers to save Bubblesworth and his robot. So while the Rangers wonder what's going on, I actually want to take a second and talk about a genuine complaint I have. The giant robots supplied by Broodwing, an alien arms dealer, are in very small supply of variety. Now, it doesn't take too many episodes to see the Rangers battle a giant robot, and you say to yourself, wait, they already blew this one up. Now, in universe, it makes sense for Broodwing to have access to multiples of the same robot model, but when they are as overused as they are, it becomes kind of stale. Made worse by the fact that very few enemies in this show ever gigantify, leaving the giant battles largely to the robot fighting the Megazord. And while there's certainly some appeal there, the fact remains that there just aren't enough giant robot designs to keep them interesting. Back to the episode. Z goes after Sam, having been the one who saw him teleport the robot away. And she saves him from those kids back at the beginning of the episode and attempts to talk to him. Bubblesworth sends Crybots, the mooks of this series, to ambush her, but Sam uses his powers to save her before vanishing away himself. Over the course of the two-parter, Kruger explains the lab accident from 2001 that we discussed last video. While Time Force was busy fighting Rancic and his mutants, Dr. Kat Manx, S.P.D's head of R&D, everything the Rangers have was built by her. She worked with some human scientists that were exposed to radiation that altered all of them, sans Kat, down to the genetic level, resulting in all of their children developing in special abilities. Now, when Kruger first came to Earth, he was actually tasked with watching over each of these kids from afar, with the intent to bring them all into S.P.D. when they were old enough. Eventually, Z and the others manage to get through to Sam, and he helps the Rangers capture Bubblesworth. Sam gets put into an early recruitment with the S.P.D. Academy before heading away to not be seen again for the rest of the show. Now that I've brought up capturing, that's another thing I want to briefly touch on. This is the second instance of our Ranger team that doesn't simply destroy the monsters they fight. Their weapons are programmed to confine them in small cards that are supposedly escape-proof. It doesn't matter who they are or what crimes they commit. Heck, even Grum isn't destroyed for the atrocities he's responsible for. And for those curious, Grum's list of genocides and conquests are rivaled only by the likes of Zed and Dark Spectre, the latter of which is a literal god. It's an interesting twist in the formula, and a nice way to change things. Next special event is Shadow, the two-parter that introduces the Shadow Ranger, which is Doggy Kruger. Kruger's sword, the Shadow Saber, has been his weapon since his days in the Academy, and ever since Sirius was destroyed, he hasn't picked it up once. But when an old adversary of his from the Battle of Sirius, Banag, resurfaces and kidnaps Kat to draw him out, he has no choice but to step up and become the Shadow Ranger.
S.P.D. Emergency!
Kruger is arguably the strongest Ranger in the show. As such, they assign him as the Extra Ranger, only having him join the fray in dire situations. He also is the primary pilot of the Delta Base Megazord, which is a perfect segue to talk about the Zords of the show. The Delta Squad Megazord is fairly standard. If you recall the Turbo Megazord, then you have some degree of understanding what the vibe is with the Zords. Skipping ahead to the Omega Ranger's Omega Max Cycle Zord, I mean, it's a fancy motorcycle that can transform into Megazord mode. Of course, the two can combine into the Delta Max Megazord, pretty standard Megazord affair. The crazy part is the aforementioned Delta Base Megazord. Not only is it basically the Gigazord of the show, but it turns the whole of S.P.D. HQ into the Megazord. The other Megazords don't even reach its waist. It's the tallest Megazord in the franchise, even with the more recent additions, and has more firepower than anything I've ever seen from the franchise either. Now, I would be remiss not to bring up one more Megazord. The SWAT Megazord is made up of 5 SWAT flyers that all just feel samey to me. Visually, I don't see the SWAT Megazord being particularly interesting, but its ability to become a blaster cannon allows for a unique situation where the Megazords do the blaster finisher, which is honestly pretty cool. So now that I've mentioned the SWAT Megazord, I should probably talk about SWAT mode. It's basically just the Rangers in Black Ops gear. They all get equipped with a rifle-like blaster that has twin-barrel firing capacity. And this doesn't even factor in Rick, who is both their finisher weapon, the K9 cannon, but he's also the Battleizer armor for the Red Ranger. The Battleizer has 2 stages, similar to Dino Thunder before it. One subdued, and another much more dynamic. Both designs are really good, but I personally prefer the base mode. The shoulder plate wings, for one reason or another, just don't do it for me, and the new sword looks clunky and difficult to wield. Finally, we can talk about Omega Ranger.
S.P.D. Orange Ranger.
Wrong thing. Okay, it's this one. Yeah, this one.
Force from the future. Yeah. S.P.D. Omega.
Thanks to him, S.P.D. has one of the larger rosters of active Rangers in the franchise. One day, Boom, Cat's gadget tester and personal assistant, is experimenting with transmitted microwaves and accidentally picks up a message from 20 years in the future.
If anyone can hear this, please send help. Today, July 11th, is the 15th anniversary of the Trubian takeover of our planet Earth.
A radio broadcast from space.
July 11th, the same day Space Patrol Delta fell, leaving us defenseless. The Trubian forces have flushed out all but a few pockets of freedom fighters. We have sent out Omega, but have not heard word. Have to sign off. July 11th, 2040.
It mentions it being the anniversary of the day S.P.D. fell and Grum's forces claimed victory. Later that same day, the Rangers are fighting a losing battle against Morgana, a mature form of Mora, as well as 2 other criminals when suddenly it's future Trunks. I mean Chibi Moon. I mean Lucina. I mean the Dragon Quest XI protagonist. Wait, no, it's
Force from the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so this isn't exactly an original idea, but it was a first in Power Rangers that was wisely never repeated. After the battle is over and the Rangers manage to successfully defeat Morgana and her allies, Omega Ranger reveals that he's Sam, all grown up and a certified Power Ranger. Fun fact about the Omega Ranger, if you watch the show or are paying attention to any of the footage that you're seeing now, you'll notice that he's always either in Ranger form or in a little white orb. We never see him power down. Well, that's because, when the team was working on the show, they all collectively hated the Omega Ranger. They hated him so much that they decided not to give him a human form for the near entirety of the show. We see him power down for a split second during the epilogue alongside the Nova Ranger, who showed up during the final battle as Deus Ex Machina.
Okay, so the editor here. I'm just doing some secondary research and looking, and from what I have been able to find, it looks like they didn't really hate the Omega Ranger. It was the fact that they didn't have enough budget in the money or budget into the show to actually be able to hire another actor to be able to play the Omega Ranger unmorphed. It seems like they all disliked the fact that they had to use a ball of light, but that was a cheaper option because the studio didn't want to give them any more money. So I think Koga's slightly right, but at the same time, from what I see, it's more of studio being cheap on production funds.
And that leaves nothing but the final showdown. And it all starts with a downed spacecraft. When the Rangers go to investigate, they find A-Squad, who had been presumed dead for most of the show. They quickly get brought back to command for a full debrief by Kruger. Unfortunately, the A-Squad are actually turncoats that sold out to the enemy. Now, they take Kruger prisoner and deliver him to Grum aboard his spaceship. They then go off to challenge the Rangers to a fight that, while difficult, they manage to gain an advantage. Until, that is, A-Squad brings out their evil Megazord to fight the Delta Squad Megazord. I mean, the Rangers try their best, but A Squad swiftly destroys the Delta Squad Megazord. And if that wasn't bad enough, as this is happening, Delta Base is under attack by Broodwing. Once the Rangers find the hangar for the SWAT flyers, they use the SWAT Megazord to completely job the A Squad Rangers, like, almost immediately. I can't help but feel like the conflict with A Squad was heavily rushed. I mean, if they hadn't been played as part of Grum's final attack, then I genuinely believe that they could have been a more menacing force to deal with. At the very least, they could have had a more dignified defeat than getting obliterated in a one-sided slaughter. Regardless, after they arrest the A Squad, the Rangers make quick work of Broodwing, but then get lured into a trap and imprisoned along with Kruger on Grum's ship. Now, thankfully, they manage to escape thanks to an unlikely hero in the form of Piggy! Don't worry, I'll cover him in the next video. This one's long enough as it is. Anyways, Kruger sends the Rangers down to Earth to help fend off the invasion, while Kruger tends to unfinished business. Utilizing Kruger's access to Omni's controls, he gives the Rangers an opening to fire at and destroy Omni. After all of that is handled, Kruger and Grum fight in one final battle, ending in Kruger cutting off his second horn before containing him, ending the Trubian threat to Earth and ensuring peace once again. I honestly wasn't sure how well this show would hold up 20 years later, but to my surprise, it's still really high quality, and the fact that they use a lot of actual police scenarios for their action time helps to better sell the realism of it all. And keep in mind, I only barely touched on the things that happen in this show. If you like Power Rangers and or enjoy police media, definitely give this a watch. It's not my favorite, but it's an easy 8 out of 10 for me. Stay tuned for more Power Rangers content. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me if you remember what 2025 felt like to you 20 years ago. Catch you later, nerds, and may the power protect you.